This is Carolina Ghost Towns, a podcast about the vanished towns and lost communities in South Carolina, North Carolina, and maybe a few other places. I'm your host, Tom Taylor. Have you ever watched a movie, then visited its filming location? I've done that several times. Right after seeing National Treasure, I traveled to Philadelphia for the first time. It was for a tech conference, but I had some spare time to wander through the city. I kept seeing where Sean Bean chased Nicolas Cage and Diane Kruger through the downtown area. In 2004, we made our first cross-country drive to Washington State. Before we left, we watched North by Northwest, then Close Encounters of the Third Kind. So, of course, we had to stop at Mount Rushmore and Devil's Tower. We even made a brief stop at the town of Wallace, Idaho. This quaint little western town served as a stand-in for the town of Dante's Peak in the movie by the same name. Here are some of the other film locations I visited. The Monterey Bay Museum, which was the location of the Cetacean Institute in Star Trek IV, Muir Woods and San Luis Obispo from Vertigo, Bodega Bay, which was featured in The Birds. You can see we kind of have a thing for Alfred Hitchcock movies. The Skagit Valley Wildlife Area was in The Big Year. In Ireland, I've been to the Aran Isles, which shows up in Father Ted and the movie Leap Year. You know, I guess just about any major city would qualify. I've been to San Francisco several times, and I've recognized spots from many, many movies. Sometimes these film locations look just as they appear in the movie. Kind of hard to change something as iconic as Devil's Tower or Independence Hall. Sometimes the scene has been altered either digitally or otherwise so as to be unrecognizable. For example, we recently watched Groundhog Day. Woodstock, Illinois stood in for Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania. I wonder what the residents of Punxsutawney think when they watch this movie, knowing that this is not their town. I guess fictional settings are better than when one city stands in for another real city. Today's ghost town was one such fictional setting. It served as the iconic setting for District 12 from The Hunger Games. Henry River Mill Village in Burke County, North Carolina, was never really a town, but an isolated village on the banks of the Henry River. Largely abandoned, it's found new life because of the movie and has grown into something of a tourist destination. Using Dave Baker's Leakstadt scale, the community would probably be an F4, F being a restored, fabricated, or semi-dilapidated community maintained as an attraction or within a park. 4 indicating that it was a formerly non-platted community of industrial or commercial significance. In the 1700s, Henry Whitener, or Widener, depending on the source, settled along a fork of the Catawba River with his family and several others. The river now bears his name, Henry Fork River. In 1751 or 1752, Native Americans attacked and killed Adam Mull and his family, who lived nearby. Henry Whitener, quote, gathered up his family and fled for the canebrake to a large cleft of rock near the Henry Fork River, close quote, according to an 1896 article in the Henry Press. The area remained largely undeveloped for another 100 years or so. By the 1860s, residents began to take advantage of the water power for small mills, but an 1895 topo map of the region still shows almost no dwellings on the current mill village area. An 1896 article in Hickory's Times-Mercury describes the area as, quote, one wild wilderness, abounded in grass and pea vines, and excellent for wild game of all kinds, close quote. In 1904, the Rudisill and Adderholt families purchased about 1,500 acres of land along a bend in the Henry Fork River. This site was chosen for its hydropower potential. Together, the Rudisills and Adderholts formed the Henry River Manufacturing Company and built a textile mill that ran 4,000 yarn spindles, along with a 30-foot dam across the river to power the mill. The company initially built 35 small houses and several boarding houses along the ridge above the mill to house the workers. As operations at the mill expanded, more houses were added, as well as amenities for the workers. A 1919 article in the Charlotte Observer reported on education in the new mill village.
15 years ago, Mr. Adderholt and Associates built the Henry River Mill at Henry River and set about to build up a clean and model community. The people who populated the village have come from the mountains, which everywhere surround the little town. They are a rugged type of mountain folk, great believers in pure home life and intensely religious. They are law-abiding and steady workers. Coming into the mill town, they have quickly taken on to the new methods of living. Many illiterate, when they came to the mill, they have been quick to take advantage of the opportunities to school their children and as quick to join in with other wholesome activities not afforded them in the mountain homes.
The article goes on to describe the schools in the village. The first was in one of the mill houses, with the interior walls removed to provide more space for a single classroom. As the number of pupils increased, classes were moved to an upper floor of the company store. By the time of the 1919 article, the village had a, quote, magnificent new brick school structure, which stands as a monument to the untiring work of Adderholt and his associates, close quote. In addition to the makeshift school, the company store provided general merchandise and served as the company office, post office, and general gathering place for the community. Workers earned scrip, called doogaloos, that could be spent at the store. The only medical services came from cities outside the village, such as Hildebrand and Hickory. In 1940, the Hickory Daily Record reported that
the village is unincorporated and there are no town officials. The behavior of the village, therefore, rests largely in the hands of the mill officials who deal with minor misdemeanors by laying off the offenders for a stated period. In the case of more serious offenses, county officers are called in.
Henry Mill manufacturing tended to be a generational workforce. Children who grew up in the mill village often began working in the mill themselves at an early age, and often remained in the same home occupied by their parents. Most of these homes had no indoor plumbing. Residents used outhouses and got their water from a town pump. The mill itself was a 3-story brick structure that sat just above the dam. At first, the only power for the plant came from water falling over the dam and through turbines. Later, steam, then in 1926, electricity replaced water as the means of power. At its peak, the mill ran 14,000 spindles, producing yarn that was mostly sold in New York to produce lace. Henry Mill suffered the fate of so many southern textile mills. During the late 1960s, prices for cotton yarn began to plummet as production moved to foreign markets. By 1972, the mill ceased operations. Workers moved away, and the village began to deteriorate. Vandalism and fires plagued the village. In 1977, a lightning strike burned the old mill. Later, vandals set fire to the old boarding house next to the company store and almost burnt the store itself. Concerned about the deterioration and vandalism, nearby resident Wade Shepard purchased the entire village, including the mill and all of the houses, in 1976. He used the mill building for storage until it burned a year later. It wasn't until 1987 when the last resident of the village moved out, after the county deemed the mill houses as unfit for habitation. Even at that late date, there was no running water or sewer system for the last residents. Shepard kept the property, and his plan was to redevelop the site, but his plans never got off the ground. In 2010, he leased the property to Lionsgate as the setting for District 12, a mining village in the movie The Hunger Games. After the movie, Shepard hoped to capitalize on the newfound popularity of Henry River and offered the property for $1.4 million. As of Shepard's death in 2015, it remained unsold. The dam, the mill foundations, and 20 of the original 35 mill houses remained, along with a company store and several privies and outbuildings. In 2019, these remaining buildings were added to the National Register of Historic Places. In 2017, Calvin Reyes purchased the Henry River property with plans to turn the area into a historic resort. Reyes successfully restored one of the mill houses. This process was documented on the HGTV show In with the Old. Reyes hopes to restore as many of the other homes as possible and use them as vacation rentals. He now offers tours through the old village.
Over 3 years ago, my family and I decided to take a giant leap and purchase an abandoned mill village, Henry River Mill Village. Our dream is to renovate the entire town, to save it. I remember the first time I walked into the store, I probably didn't even take 2 steps in, and I said, we need to buy this place. And I called my mom on the phone, and I said, I don't know what we're going to do with it. I don't know what we're going to do with all these houses. I don't know what we're going to do. I don't know how much it's going to cost. I don't know anything. I was like, but we have to buy this place. Like, there is a story here that has to be told.
I was able to visit the Henry River Mill Village in January of 2017, prior to Ray's purchase of the property. At that time, the status of the village was in limbo. Anyone could wander onto the property, for better or for worse. When fellow explorer Alan Russell and I arrived, other families were exploring the area. We parked at the old company store, the most prominent structure on the property. The building still has lettering for pastries and cakes when it was used as the bakery for District 12 in the movie. The store was boarded up, so we couldn't even get a peek through the windows. Across the street from the store, there was a house that seemed to be in better shape than many of the others. It was open, so we went on in. The upstairs was rustic, without any modern conveniences. But it was in good shape otherwise. Upstairs there had been lots of vandalism, mostly just spray paint. Later, I found out that this house was used as the home of Katniss Everdeen in the movie. That's why it was in pretty good shape. I read in one account that the houses were already in pretty bad shape and that the movie studio had to do some rebuilding to make them believable as houses. Originally, this house had been home of one of the Rudisil descendants. Alan and I wandered around the property and soon found our way down to the mill site itself. There we met Joe Klein and struck up a conversation. Joe is a local historian, and the Klein family worked in the mill. The family is featured heavily in the Arcadia publishing book Henry River Mill Village, from its Images in America series. Joe was very gracious and provided us with a first-hand description of life in the village. He then gave us a tour of the mill, the dam, and a couple of other buildings.
My parents worked in the cotton mill.
Okay.
I was 6 years old. You go back up the hill, the last house up on the right.
Wow.
We moved when I was 6 years old, was in first grade. My parents continued to work down here for a number of years.
Okay.
And people started moving off. Business, I think, got bad, and Miles on it. He's getting up, he probably in the 70s. I don't know if he got tired of fooling or what, but eventually it closed in the early 70s. So,
Okay.
and people continued to live here. A few couple did. One guy lived over across the store in that curb of the house.
Yeah.
Until the early 80s, I think the county condemned the houses and they had to move.
Yeah.
Somebody burnt the mill down in 77.
So where was the mill? It was right here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay, I can see the outline of it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Dirt corner down. I had the
Okay.
lower upper end of it. The mill set this way, the mill was back that way.
Okay. So not really a big mill, but
It's 3 stories. I got
Okay.
a book, pictures of it.
The book Joe mentioned is the Arcadia publishing book.
That was the old bridge that stood down here.
okay.
In this
Wow.
road. The road went around that dirt bank over there.
Okay.
That's the road bed that went up through there. And it come over to the top of the hill.
Wow.
1-lane bridge, wooden floor in it.
Whose house is that up on the hill?
That back years ago, that was the Johnson house. It's the 2 or 3 they've owned it since, and my sense some chiropractor now they've replaced the front post and they've glassed the front of it in. But
It kind of looks like be a mill owner or somebody overlooking his
Yeah.
estate there.
As it turns out, the house that Joe described was later the home of one of the Rudisil and Adderholt families. Joe continued with our tour, taking us down to the dam and the old mill site.
this is the upper side of the mill right
Okay.
here.
All right.
This is the lower side next to the dam. This is the dam back here, and this is the powerhouse. This is the wing walk that comes around here. It was built to keep the flood off the dam, but in 1940 it come across and it flooded the dam. They're getting most of the mill run up full of water, pulled by rope. And so goes the water got up in the mill, and they'd get somebody and throw a board on that wheel, get that rope off of it. They're probably going to jerk the back side of the mill out in the river.
Wow.
But from the old bridge up to the new bridge on this side of the road, it's 12.5 acres. Guy bought this. And then eventually we'll get making power back down here.
Really?
There's a generator in the bottom of that. Most of the dam, a lot of the dam and that wall was built huge rocks, rocks. And these eventually won't get back to making power down there.
Okay.
Wow.
All the way behind that wall, up through there behind that building, that used to be all open.
Okay. Yeah, I could see.
Wow.
That was the cotton wire house, and the concrete building back here where the pipes coming out.
Yeah.
Called the opening room. That's where they opened up the cotton, fed in the machine, and threaded it and blowed it in the mill. That's where my dad worked.
Joe talked with us about his dreams for the old village.
And this place has got to be a tourist attraction.
Yeah, we saw the signs.
See somebody come here and buy it and restore some of it.
Well, I was surprised when we came up about all the houses are still just right here. It's like everybody got up and left on the same day.
There used to be 34 houses at one time.
It's a pretty good sized village. But I was surprised that so many houses are up and the outhouses are still up. The store is still up. Because we know a lot of mill villages down in Greenville County where there's nothing. I mean, there's the dam and that's about all.
They broke into the store the other week and stole some stuff. And, they come over and put a board up. You put a board on the door and put screws in it.
Well, I tell you, we noticed that that house across the way, it was open, so we went on the porch and looked in, but it looked like somebody had kicked the lock off of it.
What, the house below?
Right across from the store.
Yeah, it was locked.
Sadly, vandalism is a constant problem.
The big old 2-story house stood there called the boarding house. Somebody burned it one weekend. They burnt several houses down. The old waste house was burnt down. But the Saturday night it burned, I can come up 6470 from Hickory. You can see the glow. I parked up the store and walked down. It was probably 100 feet or so from the store. And it was such a massive fire, they'd put water on the store to keep it from burning. They'd turn an inch and a half hose on the store and steam just boil off the side of it.
Wow. I'm glad they were able to save it.
Ooh, that was something else.
Okay. Well, this has been fascinating. Thank you so much for the tour. We're going to, I guess, wander around where we can here. Alan, shall we continue our trek?
All right.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you for your time, Joe.
Yes.
Thanks for the tour and the info. We appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.
Come back sometime.
Okay,
Maybe things like to get better.
We thanked Joe for his time, then wandered around the rest of the property. Most of the remaining houses were in very bad shape. Between the vandalism and being loved to death because of the movie, I had to wonder how much longer this place could survive. Not long after our visit, the site was closed off to visitors and put back on the market. It was later that year that Calvin Rays bought the property. While I applaud his desire to restore the old homes and revitalize the village, I have to wonder if he can really capture the spirit of Henry Mill Village. After all, guests are going to want modern conveniences, such as plumbing and electricity. We'll just have to see how his vision takes shape. That's it for this episode of Carolina Ghost Towns. My thanks to Joe Klein for his hospitality on our visit.
Happy Hunger Games! And may the odds be ever in your favor.
In this southern ghost town, we found a story untold. In the shadows of the past, we unravel, secrets unfold. With each step we take, we journey back in time. In this southern ghost town, we leave our footprints behind.
Thanks for listening. The opening music was composed by Lex FM with additional music from Pixabay. The song Southern Ghost Town was generated by Suno AI. All other music was composed and recorded by me, Tom Taylor. Carolina Ghost Towns is a part of the Random Connections empire. It's pretty much a one-man show, so I wear all the hats, including producer, writer, researcher, sound engineer, publicist, and bartender. If you like the show, please subscribe on your favorite pod venue and be sure to give us feedback. If you have questions, comments, or ideas for the show, you can reach me at carolinaghosttownspod@gmail.com. For more information and show notes, visit randomconnections.com. Thank you.
In this southern ghost town, we found a story untold. In the shadows of the past, we unravel, secrets unfold. With each step we take, we journey back in time. In this southern ghost town, we leave our footprints behind.